The war between Israel and Iran is a conflict that's been building for decades and is now spiraling out of control. The Israelis began this phase with a huge wave of strikes on June the 13th that have continued for days, dealing damaging blows to Iran's nuclear weapons program and taking out key scientific and military personnel. Iran's response has been to fire missile and drone barrages, while some Israeli leaders speak openly of regime change in Tehran.
So are you going to target the supreme leader?
We're doing what we need to do.
The threat of war between Israel and Iran has hung over the Middle East for more than 40 years. And we look at some of the key events and alliances that have shaped this proxy war and brought it out of the shadows.
The new Jewish state is born.
Iran and Israel's relationship used to be very different. After the creation of Israel in 1948, Iran was the second Muslim-majority nation to recognize the newly formed state. The two countries had diplomatic relations. Israel imported Iranian oil, and there were daily flights connecting Tel Aviv and Tehran, with a substantial Jewish community living in Iran. But then came the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Iran's former leader, the Shah, who was seen as a puppet of the US and the UK, was overthrown in a violent coup. In his place, Ayatollah Khomeini took power, and from the very beginning of his rule, the new religious republic described Israel as an enemy of Islam, the little Satan to its powerful ally America, the great Satan. Iran embraced the Palestinian cause, handing the hastily abandoned and ransacked Israeli embassy in Tehran over to the Palestinian Liberation Organization under Yasser Arafat. Iran, under its new leaders, called on all of the Muslim world to unite against Israel. But despite becoming enemies, the two countries have chosen to work together in the past when it strengthens their cause. In a marriage of convenience, Israel provided military equipment to Iran to support its long war against Saddam Hussein's Iraqi forces in the 1980s. Iran was desperate for weapons, specifically more advanced weapons from the US that Israel could provide. And for Israel, the calculation was that, while Iran's rhetoric was alarming, it was Iraq and Saddam Hussein that posed the more immediate threat. The war between Iraq and Iran eventually ended in a stalemate in 1988, and it had a profound effect on Tehran's thinking. Firstly, the need for powerful weapons, missiles and nuclear power. Iraq's use of ballistic missiles on Iranian cities made Tehran develop their own. And while Ayatollah Khomeini had initially declared nuclear weapons un-Islamic, his replacement, Ali Khamenei, told the country's nuclear scientists, regarding atomic energy, we need it now, to let our enemies know that we can defend ourselves. That effectively marked the start of the Islamic Republic's nuclear ambitions, with the aim of joining the only other nuclear power in the Middle East, Israel. Israel itself does not publicly acknowledge it has nuclear weapons, but it's believed to have been developing an arsenal since the 1960s. And secondly, the war in Iraq exposed how isolated Iran was in the region, with Syria its only real ally in the Middle East. The end of the conflict now allowed Iran to focus on building not just the state, but also its alliances with anti-Israel forces in the region. As far back as 1982, even as the country was receiving weapons from Israel, Iran helped the formation of Hezbollah, a militant Islamic group fighting Israel in Lebanon. Iran also backed Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, which were formed in the 1980s, and they also supported the Houthis in Yemen, who emerged in the early 1990s. Iran supported the Assad regime in Syria throughout his reign, and following Saddam Hussein's removal from power in 2003, Iran has backed dozens of Shia militia in Iraq. Iran's extensive influence in the region and its ongoing nuclear program are central to Israel's existential fears. Which brings us to Israel's most crucial ally, America. Israel's security is completely tied to the United States, which has provided substantial military support and brokered diplomatic ties with regional players such as Egypt, Jordan, the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain. And political leaders in both the US and Israel have long viewed Iran as a hostile and dangerous actor, with US-imposed sanctions on the Islamic Republic a near permanent feature since 1979. This was Israel's new young Prime Minister speaking to the US Congress about the Iranian threat back in 1996.
If Iran were to acquire nuclear weapons, this could presage catastrophic consequences.
By the time Benjamin Netanyahu returned to power in 2009, Israel and the US were already collaborating to sabotage Iran's nuclear program. A sophisticated cyber attack that began in 2005 targeted the computers controlling Iran's uranium enrichment facilities, severely disrupting nuclear fuel production in 2010. Netanyahu also took more direct action. Israel carried out multiple assassinations of key nuclear scientists between 2010 and 2020, including the head of Iran's nuclear program, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh.
Mr. Prime Minister, one.
But while the US and Israel agreed that Iran posed a threat, there was a difference of opinion between President Obama and Netanyahu when it came to Iran's nuclear future. Netanyahu insisted that Tehran should not enrich any uranium, whereas Obama realized that in order to get a long-term diplomatic solution, there would need to be some concessions. Relations between the US and Israel chilled in 2015 after the signing of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, widely known as the Iran nuclear deal. This agreement, negotiated by Iran with the UN Security Council and backed by Obama, placed restrictions on Iran's nuclear program and allowed inspections in exchange for sanctions relief.
Because of this deal, the international community will be able to verify that the Islamic Republic of Iran will not develop a nuclear weapon.
Netanyahu vehemently opposed the deal because it still allowed Iran to enrich some uranium, calling it a mistake of historic proportions. The Iran nuclear deal put Netanyahu's government in direct opposition with Washington over Iran. But that was all about to change.
This is one of the worst deals ever made by any country.
Donald Trump's surprise victory in November 2016 was a boost to Netanyahu, with the new president inviting him to the White House in his first month in office. Then, during a trip to Israel, Trump made a clear break from Obama's approach to Iran, with the US president and Netanyahu now firmly aligned.
Together we can thwart Iran's unbridled ambition to become a nuclear weapon state.
In 2018, during a presentation involving a slideshow in front of a backdrop of files and CDs, Netanyahu said that Iran had lied to the world about its nuclear intentions when signing the 2015 deal. And just a few days later, Donald Trump withdrew the US from the agreement.
This was a horrible one-sided deal that should have never, ever been made.
Trump reimposed sanctions on Iran and assassinated their top general Qasem Soleimani in 2020 while he was visiting Iraq, as the US president began to pressure Iran in an effort to sign a new expanded agreement. But that deal has never materialized, and instead, critics say, the US withdrawal from the 2015 deal has seen increasing violations of its terms by Iran and an acceleration of the nuclear program. In early 2023, a confidential report by the International Atomic Energy Agency said it had detected uranium particles enriched to 83.7% at one of Iran's nuclear plants, very close to weapons grade. Then, that same year, events in Israel set the stage for a conflict with Iran that would erupt nearly 2 years later. The October 7th attacks by Hamas were the deadliest on Israeli soil since the nation's founding. Netanyahu's government immediately retaliated, waging a war in Gaza that Palestinian officials say has killed more than 55,000 people. While the military threat from Hamas has all but been removed, Israel has weakened other Iranian allies, invading southern Lebanon and decimating Hezbollah's fighting force and killing its leader, Hassan Nasrallah. They carried out joint strikes with the US on Houthis in Yemen, and they also bombed the Iranian consulate in the Syrian capital of Damascus in April 2024, as well as assassinating Hamas's political leader Ismail Haniyeh while he was in the Iranian capital Tehran in July of the same year. When Syria's President Bashar al-Assad was overthrown in December 2024, Israel took the opportunity to destroy any remaining threats to Israel's air force within Syria, effectively creating a safe corridor for future strikes on Iran. And so, in just 14 months, Iran's network of proxy military support was all but gone. So the attacks on Iran come at a time when Tehran has few allies to turn to. Israel's targeting and killing of key Iranian military personnel and nuclear experts, a seemingly non-existent Iranian air defense, and Israel's own ability to defend against most retaliatory strikes has given Netanyahu a clear upper hand. But the war again highlights his nation's reliance on the United States. While Israel could not have carried out its attacks on June the 13th without the Americans being made aware of their plans, the US has resisted direct involvement in the conflict so far.
I may do it, I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do.
Trump has demanded unconditional surrender, but he's no fan of conflict, having spent the past decade in politics promising not to get America involved in any more wars. What the US president decides to do next is the central question in this conflict. Israel's objective of destroying Iran's nuclear program is not possible without the use of heavy bunker-busting ordnance, which only the United States possesses. Or if the US and Israel are aiming for Iran's full surrender, or even regime change, then Ali Khamenei shows little sign of offering that.
فکر نکنند که زدند و تمام شد. نه.
For more than 40 years, the potential for war between Israel and Iran has cast a shadow over global politics. The attacks since June the 13th have changed everything and brought this fight out into the open.
The joint American-Israeli strikes in Iran may have been precipitated by a staggering buildup of force in the region, but its roots go back more than just a few weeks. Iran has been a thorn in the side of the United States for decades, raging against the great Satan that once helped orchestrate a coup against its leaders.
America's relationship with Iran had been tense for decades before the hostage crisis which came to define their bitter feud. The failed rescue mission of 52 embassy staff abducted during the 1979 revolution. Helicopters lying wrecked in the desert after poor planning and mechanical failure. 8 US soldiers killed in the confusion. By the time the hostages were eventually returned, the pattern had been set. Iran's Islamic leadership implacably opposed to a US-centric worldview, determined to use its own influence to build an Islamic republic at the heart of the Middle East, and pursuing nuclear energy as a matter of national pride and security. But nuclear bombs, feared Washington, were Iran's real ambition, which Iran has denied all along, and thus we arrive at today. The US and its allies say Iran's support of allied militias across the region, what Tehran calls the axis of resistance, fuels instability and political violence. From Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon and Syria to Shia militias in Iraq and the Houthis in Yemen. Iran sponsoring what the West calls terror and its nuclear program, both issues always near the top of the global diplomatic in-tray. President Obama reached a deal that supposedly limited enrichment with the Iranian President Rouhani.
The two of us discussed our ongoing efforts to reach an agreement over Iran's nuclear program,
only to be torn up by Trump during his first term in favor of sanctions.
We will be instituting the highest level of economic sanction.
October the 7th then unleashed change not just in Gaza, but across the entire region. Israel went after Hamas. Gaza destroyed, tens of thousands killed. Hamas still in charge, but weakened. Likewise, Hezbollah in Lebanon, whose leadership was decapitated and firepower degraded after pages were booby-trapped and a relentless bombing campaign. The axis of resistance was collapsing. As for Iran itself, Israel launched the 12-day war last summer, which many say bumped Trump into attacking the country's nuclear facilities in Operation Midnight Hammer.
They were decimated. Their nuclear capability, that potential which could have happened within 3 or 4 weeks, was decimated. It's been obliterated.
Since then, Washington deployed a huge armada, Trump's goal expanding from stopping an Iranian nuke to regime change. During widespread protests a few weeks ago, the US promised the demonstrators help was on its way. But the mullahs and Revolutionary Guard are in total control of internal security. Human rights groups say 30,000 were killed for daring to protest. Last week in Geneva, more nuclear talks ended without agreement. And this morning, the US moved again, backed by Israel, without congressional or UN agreement and no apparent basis in international law. President Trump claiming again the US was paving the way for Iranians to rise up.
When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take.
Israel called it Operation Roaring Lion. The United States called it Operation Epic Fury. Whatever the name, today's attack could forever change the Middle East and risks a forever war of the kind Donald Trump had vowed to end. It began with American and Israeli strikes targeting government buildings in Iran's capital, Tehran, including the Supreme Leader's compound. as well as sites across western Iran, including Karaj, Qom, Isfahan, Shiraz and Kermanshah. Donald Trump's threat to take out the Iranian Navy was backed by explosions heard in the southern port cities of Bushehr and Chabahar. Iranian media said a girls' school was hit in the southern city of Minab, killing dozens. Iran hit back quickly at Israel, triggering air defences and sirens across the country. It also appears to have closed the vital Strait of Hormuz and says it fired missiles at all the American bases in the Gulf, including in Qatar, Bahrain, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and Jordan. So far, one casualty has been confirmed from falling debris in Abu Dhabi.
Panic on the streets of Tehran this morning as the first US and Israeli missiles landed. Disaster or deliverance? After weeks of tension, they couldn't believe their eyes and ears. The US justified the assault, saying a nuclear-armed Islamic Republic is a threat to the whole world.
For these reasons, the United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated.
Target number one, the compound of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, destroyed. The Israelis are reported to believe that he was likely killed. Revolutionary Guard targets were struck all over the country, as the Israeli Prime Minister suggested that the attacks were to support the people of Iran.
Help has arrived.
And I believe the day is near when Israel and a free Iran will hold hands in favor of security and peace, in favor of progress and prosperity.
Iran hit back immediately, targeting the US naval base in Bahrain, as well as US facilities and other targets in another 7 countries across the region. After the UAE and Jordan were hit, Saudi Arabia condemned Iran's blatant aggression in a strong statement, indicating that Gulf countries are supporting the US and Israel. An Iranian missile hit Kuwait airport, and planes have been grounded indefinitely across the region. Sirens sounded across Israel as people sought shelter, expecting attacks. Iran said it had blocked the Straits of Hormuz, the shipping lane which handles some 20% of the world's oil.
Trump should know that today we are equipped with the most advanced capabilities to fight you for years. At the start of the war, we are firing whatever we have at the bottom of our stockpile. But as it continues, we will use our most powerful missiles, the things we have not revealed until now, the ones we have kept under wraps, we will also bring out in the coming days.
The regime brought out a few supporters onto the streets, trying to show that it fears nothing. But the Americans are hoping that somehow their air campaign can persuade Iranians who protested against the regime last month and were killed in their thousands to rise up again.
Finally, to the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations.
So many people are already getting agitated by what is happening in the Middle East. The Iran-Israeli/American war that is ongoing. And a lot of believers, Christians, are beginning to wonder, could this be the war anticipated or prophesied in the book of Ezekiel chapter 38 and chapter 39? it's necessary that I make a comment too on it. I want us to look at the scripture, an admonishment from Apostle Paul, because it seems to be the same setting now, where he spoke in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And he said, "Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and by our gathering together unto him." And he said that you be not soon shaken in mind or be troubled, neither by spirit nor by word, nor by letter as from us, as that the day of Christ is at hand. And he emphasized in verse 3, let no man deceive you by any means. For that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. I also want to borrow that word from Apostle Paul, that ye be not soon shaken in mind or be troubled by what is going on. People are giving all manner of interpretations, speculations concerning, Christ will soon come, the world will soon end. We have to place these things properly. Because when any major thing comes to shake the world, everybody, Remember the blood moon. When it came, everybody, hey, that's the sign of the end of the world. Another one, when Trump ascended, they begin to associate Trump with the trumpet. The trumpet has to do with the trumpet sound. And when he moved the diplomatic office from Tel Aviv also to Jerusalem, all manner of things were speculated, and this could be the end, this will be the end. Then COVID-19 came. This is another one again that turned the whole world upside down with all manner of voices claiming authority over the interpretation of the word of God concerning the end time events. But I want to tell the bride of Jesus Christ that you be not soon shaken. Let no man deceive you by any means. There are scriptures we have to watch. And that is what we are raised up to keep you from unnecessary anxiety. We know where we are watching. But let me limit my comment now to what is going on now in the Middle East. Remember that when it comes to war, Israel since 1948, they got to their land, it's been war. In fact, not just 1948, Israel since they moved to the land of Canaan, it has been battle, war. Every inch of land that God promised them in the land of Canaan, they possess it with war, led by those mighty generals. We know them. We hear of Moses, we hear of Joshua, we hear of Gideon, we hear of David, Saul, we hear of all those mighty warriors and the kings of Israel that resisted those nations that would not let them possess the land given to them by God. And they left their land in AD 70. We all know what happened when that Roman general, the Roman soldiers came, scattered them in AD 70, and they were all scattered all over Europe, all over the world. But there was a promise in Ezekiel and so many scriptures that they will come back. But this time, remember that it was because they rejected Christ, they crucified him, and the prophecy that Christ spoke, Matthew 24, prophecies and other parables that all pointed was fulfilled throughout this period. The Lord Jesus Christ spoke, they were fulfilled. They rejected, they said, let the blood, they rejected Christ and said, let his blood be upon them and their children. Of course, we know what happened in AD 70. But somehow, a time came for scriptures to be fulfilled that they will come back. And then we hear of the Zionist movement and, of course, the Second World War that during which time Hitler also launched his assault and those killings of the Jews that necessitated United Nations vote that granted them back their land in the land of Palestine. The land belonged to them anyway. And they came back to the land from 1948, when the independence was declared for Israel to be an independent nation. And from everywhere they've been coming since then, the wars continue. If I give you some of them that are on record, we have in 1948, the Arab-Israeli War. That was when they said they would not allow Israel to be a nation. 1947, between 1947 and 1949. The 1956 Swiss crisis, that is the Sinai War. Israel, along with the United Kingdom and France, they launched a military operation against Egypt to reopen the Strait of Tehran and end the Fedayeen attacks, all those terrorists that were attacking them within that period along that route. We also have the war they fought in 1967, the popular Six-Day War. Remember that it was a preemptive strike by Israel against Egypt, Jordan, Syria. And that was the period that Israel got to capture the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights. That was the period Israel used the opportunity and captured those places. Their land was expanding. Their territory was expanding. And each time this war is fought, speculators will start making their speculations. We still have the war in 1973. The Yom Kippur War, very popular war, the October War. It was a surprise attack by Egypt and Syria on the Jewish holy day. Israel fought it off, and all the fallout of that war. In 1982, the Lebanon War, they tagged it Operation Peace Operation Peace for Galilee. Israel invaded Lebanon and aimed at expelling the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, from their bases there in Lebanon. And in 2006, we have Lebanon War. That is the second Lebanon War, a month-long conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. Took whole 1 month of that war. The most recent one we have in 2023, the Israeli-Hamas war that started in October 2023 following that gruesome attack by Hamas. And it's been on, and that war has been on with Hamas in that Gaza Strip. Then, of course, we also know what they did not too long ago with the 12-day war, where Israel went to attack the military site to stop Iran from having any nuclear weapon that they were suspected to be wanting to amass. Then we now have the ongoing war, Israel and America also now in collaboration, hitting at Iran, and is still on till this moment I'm talking today. March is still ongoing. But each time these wars come up, people begin to think, could this be what will culminate into the war that is prophesied in Ezekiel chapter 38 and chapter 39? We are watching. Anything we say now will just be speculative. However, I doubt if it is going to be the war, because right now, the war in Ezekiel 38-39, all the Arab nations will confederate. They will come together against Israel. But right now, Iran is fighting some of the Gulf nations. They are sending drone attacks against UAE, Kuwait, Iraq, and even Saudi Arabia. Maybe these are some of the places America has their military bases. But they're attacking them. So how will they now come together against Israel as prophesied in Ezekiel 38 and 39? That is why he said, we should not be troubled. This cannot be the war. At all, this cannot be the war yet. And I want you to know that up to this moment I'm talking, there are still some Arab nations that recognize Israel. Take, for instance, Egypt has some form of agreement with Israel that they had from 1979. Jordan, in 1994, also had an agreement with Israel. UAE and Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco, in 2020, the year 2020, sponsored by the Americans, they also entered an agreement with Israel that they call the Abraham Accord. Yes, I think it's Abraham Accord. And so these are four nations coming together in this accord, having agreement, a collaboration one way or the other, either economic or security, scientific technology, one way or the other, bringing them together. So, and that accord still stands. They have a lot to benefit for now. So I don't see that as the war yet. And remember that if Ezekiel 38, 39 will take place, the war will take place, the way it is presented there, America is not involved. And for now, the military pact America has with Israel, so far with the military might of America still staring at them, they won't easily come against Israel for now. So if that will happen, something has to take place that will take either a shift of the American policy of defending Israel, or something has to happen that America will have to draw back to allow these nations to carry out what we see in Ezekiel chapter 38 and chapter 39. And so, if anybody is getting worried, please, let's be guided by this, that this war in Ezekiel 38, 39 is the whole Arab nations that will come together, not just one nation, Iran. Of course, when Bible prophecies will be fulfilled, anything can happen. Anything can happen. This may stir up something that may bring the Arabs together again. And all of them will recognize, take a common front against Israel. But for now, we are still watching. And I will advise we stop unnecessary speculations. Watch the scriptures. Watch what is happening. And for Christians, keep praying for Israel, for that is what the Bible admonishes us to do. Pray for Israel. Pray for Jerusalem. And that is what we are doing because they are our brothers and our sisters. And of course, we should pray for the peace of the world, because when there's peace on earth, it will also, we'll also enjoy it. When there's, like the war is on now, prices of fuel is going up, gas going up, and the economy is already shaking. The trade centers all over, they are all shaking. The stock markets are all shaking already. There is already a shock wave passing through the world economy. And so it will certainly affect every one of us. So we'll continue to pray for peace. However, what is prophesied will come to pass. And events, let's watch events that will make this prophecy clear. However, we as Christians, this is one of the pointers to our homegoing called the rapture. And that is why it means so much to us to get ready and prepare for homegoing. Anything can happen now, and the rapture will take place. God bless you.